A 63-year-old fisherman off the rugged coast of Maine found a strange weathered bottle drifting alone in the early morning mist. It was thick glass, greenish, capped with rusted metal, bobbing gently against his boat, and it seemed to call to him in the silence of dawn. No one knows how long it had been at sea, or how it survived the violent Atlantic storms, but when he pulled it aboard and held it in his cracked hands, he felt a cold weight that made him shiver, even before he realized there was something sealed inside. When the authorities finally came and saw what was hidden in the darkness of that bottle, they fell silent, their eyes locked on what lay within, pale with disbelief. Would you dare to open something like this if you found it drifting toward you? Tell me what you would do, and subscribe for more stories like this. Thomas Tom Marlowe had fished the fog-choked waters off the coast of Portland, Maine for over 40 years. At 63, his lined face told the story of cold dawns and hard winds, his thick hands accustomed to hauling lobster traps and repairing tangled nets by lantern light. Locals knew him as quiet, respectful, the kind of man who knew when to let the sea speak first, who listened to gulls and tides before starting his engine, who could sense a storm hours before it reached the horizon. Every morning at 4, Tom brewed his strong, bitter coffee, pulled on the same salt-stained boots, and set out alone in his creaking, blue-painted boat, the Abigail, named after his late wife. It was routine, and in a world where routine often feels like safety, Tom found peace in the sameness of his dawn rituals. That morning began like any other, the hush of the sea only interrupted by the hum of his engine and the slap of water against the hull. The fog sat heavy, rolling in slow sheets over the water, swallowing the lighthouse beams in pale gray. Tom checked his traps, marking each waypoint in his mind. Seagulls circled lazily above, and the air smelled of salt and wet rope. Nothing was unusual. Nothing suggested that this would become the day that would change everything he thought he knew about the sea he trusted so deeply. But then, near a rocky outcrop where the kelp grew thick, Tom noticed something bobbing against the current, a small dark shape rocking gently. At first, he thought it was driftwood, or maybe a clump of seaweed caught on debris. But as he maneuvered closer, he caught a glint of green glass in the pale dawn light, a reflection that didn't belong among the dark water and sea foam. He frowned, curiosity stirring, and reached for his boat hook, snagging the object gently and pulling it closer until he could grab it with his gloved hand. It was a bottle, not the kind you find rolling on the shore, but thick, old glass, the kind you might find in an antique shop buried under layers of dust. The bottle was dark green, its glass rippled with imperfections, air bubbles trapped within like tiny frozen storms. Its metal cap was rusted but intact, and inside, Tom could see something white, almost like rolled parchment or a cloth pressed tight against the glass. The bottle felt oddly heavy, heavier than a simple message in a bottle should, and the coldness of it seemed to seep into his skin. Tom turned it over in his hands, the water dripping from its surface pooling on the deck. He could see strange symbols scratched lightly into the glass near the neck, not immediately visible unless the light caught it right. They looked like letters, but not quite, as if someone had written them in haste, or perhaps with hands shaking from cold or fear. The fog thickened around him, muffling the cries of gulls as he stood there, the bottle in his hand, feeling as if he was holding something that wasn't meant to be found, something the sea had tried to hide. He placed the bottle carefully near the console of his boat, glancing at it between pulling up the rest of his traps. But no matter how he tried to focus on his work, his eyes kept drifting back to it, the way it rocked slightly with the boat's gentle sway, the way it seemed to wait. It was an ordinary morning, but the bottle made it feel like the air had shifted, like the sea was holding its breath, waiting to see what he would do. After finishing his rounds, Tom decided to head back to the dock earlier than usual. The bottle sat beside him as he piloted the Abigail back toward the harbor, its presence heavy in the small space, pressing against the quiet of the cabin. He found himself glancing at it again and again, wondering who had sealed it, how long it had been adrift, what currents had carried it to him on this morning, and whether he was meant to find it or had stumbled upon something that should have stayed lost. Pulling into the harbor, Tom tied the Abigail to the weathered post and lifted the bottle again, weighing it in his hand before slipping it carefully into his old canvas satchel. He could feel the weight of it against his hip as he walked along the creaking dock toward his truck, the damp morning breeze carrying the scent of salt and diesel. People nodded to him as he passed, but Tom didn't speak. Didn't mention the bottle. Didn't mention the strange feeling that had settled in his chest like a coiled rope, tightening each time he thought of what might be inside. Driving home along the winding coastal road, Tom kept glancing at the satchel beside him, half expecting the bottle to shift or rattle, to somehow announce itself again. He found himself remembering stories his father told him about the sea, stories of old wrecks and ghost ships, of fishermen who found things they should not have opened, and the quiet fear in the old man's eyes when he spoke of objects that carried curses as surely as they carried salt. Arriving at his small, weather-beaten cottage, Tom placed the satchel on his kitchen table. The house was quiet, filled with the soft ticking of a wall clock and the distant cry of gulls. The bottle sat there, its green glass catching the light from the window, almost alive in the morning glow. Tom made himself a cup of coffee, his hands trembling slightly as he set it down beside the bottle. He sat down across from it, staring at it, feeling the tension rising within him like the tide creeping up the rocks outside. He reached out, running a finger along the rough glass, feeling the etched symbols, the rust of the cap flaking slightly under his touch. He wondered again who had sealed it, why it was so heavy, and why, despite the countless bottles he had seen washed up over the years, this one felt so different, so charged with a presence that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Tom considered simply opening it right there, twisting the rusted cap off and pulling out whatever was inside. But something stopped him, a hesitation that was not fear exactly, but a deep instinctual caution. He thought about the sea, how it takes and gives on its own terms, how it hides secrets in its depths, and how sometimes the things it returns are not meant to be disturbed. As the day wore on, Tom found himself unable to focus on anything else. He tried to mend some of his nets, but his eyes kept drifting back to the bottle, its dark glass reflecting the light like a watchful eye. He stepped outside, the sea breeze cool against his face, but the image of the bottle sat heavy in his mind, demanding his attention. Finally, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple, Tom made a decision. He would open it, but not yet. He needed to know more first, to see if he could find any clue about what it might contain, or where it might have come from. He decided to take it to an old friend, someone who might know how to handle something like this, someone who understood the sea and the strange things it sometimes surrendered. Tom carefully wrapped the bottle in a thick cloth and placed it back in his satchel, locking the door behind him as he stepped out into the evening chill. The streets were quiet, the lights from the harbor casting reflections on the water. As he drove toward the edge of town, the bottle rested beside him, and Tom felt the tension within him rising with every mile, the sense that he was carrying something much larger than a piece of glass and paper, something that might carry a story the sea had tried to forget. He arrived at a small, cluttered workshop near the docks. The sign above the door faded, the windows lined with dust and the smell of oil and rope thick in the air. The man inside, Harold Green, was in his 70s, a marine salvage expert who had spent a lifetime pulling wreckage and forgotten cargo from the ocean floor. If anyone could help him understand what he had found, it was Harold. Tom stepped inside, the bell above the door jingling softly, and Harold looked up from a table scattered with old maps and rusted tools. His eyes, sharp despite his age, narrowed slightly as he saw the wrapped object in Tom's hands. "What have you got there, Tom?" Harold asked, wiping his hands on a rag as he stepped closer. Tom hesitated, then carefully unwrapped the bottle, setting it on the table between them. The green glass seemed darker in the yellow light of the workshop, the etched symbols almost glowing as Harold leaned in, inspecting it with a practiced eye. "Where did you find this?" Harold asked, his voice low, his fingers hovering just above the glass. "Floating near the kelp beds this morning," Tom replied, his voice quiet. "Something about it. I don't know, Harold. It feels wrong." Harold nodded slowly, turning the bottle gently, his eyes scanning the symbols, the rusted cap, the faint outline of the object inside. He didn't speak for a long moment, the silence stretching between them as the sounds of the harbor drifted in through the cracked windows. "This isn't just any bottle, Tom," Harold finally said, his voice tight. "You found something that might be older than either of us, something that's been out there for a long time." Tom felt the chill again, the weight of the bottle seeming to press against him even from across the table. "What do you think is inside?" Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Harold looked up, his eyes serious, a hint of concern flickering in them. I don't know, Harold said quietly. But we need to be careful, Tom. Things like this, they don't just wash up by accident. Tom nodded, the tension within him coiling tighter, the sense that this was only the beginning of something much larger than he could have imagined. He looked at the bottle, the way it sat there, silent and waiting, and he knew that whatever lay inside, whatever story it carried, he was already a part of it now, whether he wanted to be or not. Tom watched as Harold carefully turned the bottle under the dim lamp, the etched symbols throwing crooked shadows on the cluttered workbench. The workshop smelled of brine and old rope, of salt ground into wood by decades of work, and the heavy quiet made Tom's heart pound against his ribs. Harold didn't rush, didn't speak, but he kept glancing at the bottle with an expression Tom couldn't read, a mix of curiosity and unease that made the air feel heavier. Finally, Harold reached for a magnifying glass, bringing it close to the symbols carved into the neck. These markings, he murmured. They look like old maritime symbols, but not quite. Almost like they're coded. He traced them with a gloved finger, his brows knitting together. Tom leaned closer, the lamp buzzing softly above them, catching the glint of the bottle's surface. The closer he looked, the more the symbols seemed to shift, like they were never meant to be understood by anyone on shore. Tom's hands twitched at his sides. "Is it dangerous?" he asked, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. Harold's eyes flickered to his, sharp and searching. "Anything the sea gives back can be dangerous," Harold said simply, and Tom felt that truth sink into his bones. Harold set the bottle down, removing the magnifier. "What do you plan to do, Tom?" Tom looked at the bottle, feeling that cold, heavy pull it carried, a weight that made him feel like he was standing at the edge of something deep and dark. "I have to open it," he admitted, though the words felt like they were scraping his throat on the way out. Harold sighed, rubbing the back of his neck, his eyes distant. "If you do, you need to be ready for what you might find. Objects like this can carry stories, deaths, or worse." Tom swallowed. "Can you help me open it safely?" Harold nodded slowly, as if the decision settled something heavy inside him as well. "Tomorrow morning. I need to prepare the tools and set up the extractor so we don't damage what's inside. If there's parchment in there, it could fall apart the moment it hits air." Tom agreed, though every instinct in him screamed that waiting was the wrong choice, that the bottle would disappear if he took his eyes off it. But Harold was right. If the contents were fragile, rushing would only destroy whatever truth it carried. They wrapped the bottle again, this time in oilcloth, and sealed inside a small wooden crate Harold provided, with layers of straw to keep it secure. Tom carried it back to his truck, placing it on the passenger seat as if it were a living thing, something that could feel the roughness of the road as he drove back along the darkened coastal highway. The moon was a cold eye above the pines, and every rustle in the woods felt like it was following him, like the sea wasn't willing to let its secret go so easily. Back at home, Tom placed the crate on his kitchen table, pulling a chair close, and sat down, staring at it. He couldn't sleep. Every hour felt stretched thin, the ticking clock on the wall counting down to morning in loud, echoing ticks. He found himself talking to the crate, whispering questions in the dark. "Who sealed you? Why now? What are you carrying that the sea couldn't keep?" When dawn finally broke, Tom was waiting outside Harold's workshop, the crate on the passenger seat, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly they ached. Harold opened the door, his eyes tired but alert, nodding silently. Together they set the crate on the workbench and unwrapped it carefully, Harold slipping on latex gloves while Tom stood back, every muscle in his body tense. Harold brought out a small cutting tool and a rust remover, working meticulously around the corroded metal cap, spraying the edges and waiting, the hiss of the spray loud in the quiet room. The rust bubbled and flaked, revealing the dark metal beneath, and with a slow, careful twist using a clamp wrench, the cap finally creaked, loosening with a sound that made Tom's stomach tighten. A sharp, briny smell filled the workshop, mixed with something else, an old, musty scent, like a tomb opened after being sealed for centuries. Harold paused, letting the scent settle, his eyes cautious. "There's no pressure buildup, so it's safe," he murmured, then lifted the cap the rest of the way, setting it down with a soft clink on the table. They both leaned over the bottle, and Tom felt a shiver crawl up his spine. Inside was not just a rolled piece of parchment, but something else, something metallic, glinting dully in the dim light. Harold reached in with a long, thin pair of tongs, gripping the paper carefully and lifting it out, dripping with dark seawater. The paper a yellowed, waterlogged scroll that seemed impossibly intact. Beneath it, still resting in the bottom of the bottle, was a small, oddly shaped metal object, like a pendant or medallion, etched with the same strange symbols. They set the scroll gently on a clean cloth, unrolling it inch by inch. The paper was covered in faded ink, the script slanted and sharp, like the writer had been in a hurry or in fear. It wasn't English, but fragments of words stood out in Latin, while others seemed to be in a language Tom didn't recognize, like a code only a few could read. Harold adjusted his glasses, leaning closer. "It looks like coordinates," he said slowly, pointing to a section near the bottom, where a series of numbers were written in a careful hand, followed by a word that made Harold's face go pale for a moment. "Prohibitus." Tom's mouth went dry. "What does that mean?" Harold swallowed. "It means forbidden. Someone didn't want this found, Tom." They turned their attention to the medallion, Harold lifting it carefully with gloved hands. It was heavier than it looked, darkened with age, and the symbols etched into it matched those on the bottle's neck. As Harold turned it under the light, they saw something even stranger, a small compartment on the back, sealed with a tiny latch that clicked open with a soft snap. Inside was a sliver of something dark, like a fragment of stone or metal, but as the light hit it, it shimmered faintly with colors Tom couldn't name, hues that seemed to change as he moved his head. A cold breeze seemed to stir in the workshop, despite the windows being closed, and Tom felt his skin prickle, a wave of nausea rising in his throat for a moment before it passed. "What is that?" Tom whispered. Harold shook his head, his face pale. "I don't know, Tom, but it's not something I've ever seen before." They placed the medallion beside the scroll, the two objects sitting there like silent guardians of a story long buried under tides and storms. The numbers on the scroll pulled at Tom's mind, a gnawing need to know what lay at those coordinates. What was so important that someone sealed it in a bottle and cast it into the sea, trusting the ocean to carry it far from curious hands? "Are you going to follow it?" Harold finally asked, his voice quiet. Tom's eyes didn't leave the scroll. "I have to," Harold sighed, wiping a hand across his face. "Then be careful, Tom. Whatever this is, someone went to great lengths to hide it." Tom nodded, feeling the weight of the promise settle into his bones, knowing that the sea had given him something he couldn't ignore, no matter how deeply he wished he could return to the quiet routine of his dawn fishing trips. The coordinates were burned into his mind now, a siren call pulling him toward whatever truth lay hidden at the edge of the world. As he left Harold's workshop, the scroll and medallion secured in a waterproof case, Tom felt the eyes of the sea on him, the wind carrying a whisper he almost understood. He didn't know what he would find or if he would come back the same man, but he knew one thing: some secrets are meant to be found, even if they change everything. And as Tom started preparing his boat that evening, checking the GPS, studying the tides, and feeling the thrum of the motor under his boots, the coordinates glowed on the screen like a beacon, a forbidden beacon. And now, I want to hear from you. If you were Tom, would you follow those coordinates knowing it might lead to something dangerous, something that was never meant to be found? Or would you leave the secret to the sea, letting it remain hidden forever? Let me know in the comments, and if you're intrigued to see what Tom finds next, give this video a like, subscribe for more real mystery stories like this, and ring the bell so you won't miss when we open the next chapter of this strange discovery. Tom barely slept the night before his departure. The coordinates burned in his mind, replaying every time he closed his eyes, each blink showing flashes of the medallion's shifting colors, the word prohibitus scrawled in fading ink across the scroll, and the salt-heavy memory of pulling that bottle from the water, unknowingly pulling a hidden story into the light. By dawn, he was standing on the deck of the Abigail, the cool Maine breeze pushing against his lined face as he loaded gear. Extra fuel tanks, waterproof bags, flares, a satellite phone, and Harold's old diving flashlight, which had guided many before him into the black waters beneath wrecks. He could have gone alone, and for a moment, he thought about it. But the coordinates were far off the coast, near a rocky shoal known for shifting tides and unpredictable currents, a place whispered about in dockside bars as Dead Hand Point, though no one could remember exactly who named it or why. Tom needed help if he was going to see this through, and so, after a long sip of bitter coffee, He dialed the number of someone he knew would understand the weight of the sea and the weight of secrets. That someone was Emily Torres, 38, a marine biologist turned freelance diver, known along the Maine coast for her fearlessness in wreck dives and cold water recoveries. She arrived with her own gear, oxygen tanks strapped into her battered pickup, and eyes sharp with curiosity as Tom explained what he had found and the coordinates that had led him to call her. Emily didn't interrupt, but her eyes narrowed at the word prohibitus, and a chill seemed to pass through the air between them. "So you want to go there?" she said when he finished, tying her dark hair back as she studied him. Tom nodded. "I need to know what's there," he said simply, his voice carrying the soft firmness of a man who knew the sea's call was not something that could be ignored. Emily glanced at the water, the wind rippling across the surface like a restless spirit. "Then let's get it done," she replied, her tone brisk but respectful, understanding the quiet urgency in Tom's eyes. They set out just as the sun climbed above the horizon, the engine of the Abigail rumbling beneath their boots as they cut through the gray-green water, seagulls wheeling overhead. The coastline shrank behind them, replaced by endless rolling swells that glittered beneath the morning light. Emily spread nautical charts on the console, cross-checking the coordinates with sonar and satellite imagery on Tom's GPS. The area they were headed to showed no known wrecks, no fishing markers, and no reason for anyone to have placed coordinates there. It was, in every official sense, empty water. As they neared the coordinates, the wind picked up, churning the water into restless peaks. The sound of waves slapping the hull became rhythmic, hypnotic, but Tom felt each slap like a warning. The GPS pinged as they arrived directly over the location, the screen blinking insistently, marking a spot where the water was deceptively calm, but carried an undertow that could drag even seasoned divers into darkness if they weren't careful. Emily checked her gear, adjusting her oxygen tank and slipping into her dry suit with practiced movements. "If there's something down there," she said, tightening the seals, "I'll find it." Tom handed her the medallion, now secured in a sealed bag, its colors pulsing faintly in the filtered light. "Take this," he said. "If you see markings like this down there, you'll know you're in the right place." Emily nodded, her expression a mix of excitement and caution, and slid the bag into a secure pocket on her suit. She checked the waterproof camera strapped to her shoulder and gave Tom a thumbs up before slipping over the edge of the Abigail, the splash muffled by the wind as she disappeared into the dark water. Tom kept his eyes on the waves, scanning for signs of trouble, the rope tied to Emily's dive marker running taut in his hands. The minutes stretched long, each second heavy with the weight of the unknown. He glanced at the GPS repeatedly, half expecting the coordinates to vanish, to reset, as if the sea itself was trying to swallow its secret again. Then, after what felt like hours, the rope tugged twice, the signal that Emily was resurfacing. Tom rushed to the stern, pulling as Emily's head broke the surface, her eyes wide and her breathing heavy as she gripped the ladder and climbed back aboard, water streaming from her suit in rivulets. "You need to see this," she said, pulling off her mask, her voice tight. She handed Tom the camera, the screen already pulled up to the last recording. Tom held it carefully, pressing play. The screen flickered before clearing to the dark green of the deep water, the beam of the flashlight cutting through like a blade. At first it showed nothing but silt and rocks. Then a dark shape emerged, a jagged structure, metal twisted and bent, covered in barnacles and algae. It looked like part of a hull, but unlike any boat Tom had seen. Emily's light moved across its surface, revealing the same symbols etched into the metal, identical to those on the medallion and the bottle's neck. Tom's breath caught in his throat as the camera panned over a circular hatch partially buried in the sand. The edges lined with corroded symbols, one of which was a perfect match to the prohibitus symbol on the scroll. Emily's gloved hand appeared on the screen, brushing away sand, revealing more markings and what looked like a small, almost hidden latch. The video ended abruptly as Emily surfaced, and Tom lowered the camera, his mind spinning. "What is it?" he asked, looking at her. Emily shook her head, water dripping from her hair. "I don't know. It's not a regular wreck, Tom. It's like a sealed container, but big. Really big, and it's down there in a place where it shouldn't be." They secured the camera and pulled up the sonar, scanning the bottom. The structure appeared as a long, dark shape beneath the water, partly buried but with straight lines and unnatural angles that told Tom it wasn't a rock formation. Emily zoomed in, marking out the hatch she found. "It's about 30 feet long," she said, tapping the screen. "And the symbols, they're all over it." Tom felt a chill move through him. He had expected something strange, but this was something else. It was deliberate, hidden, and it was calling to him the same way the bottle had. Emily's eyes met his, both of them knowing that this was no ordinary find. They decided to contact the Coast Guard and local authorities, knowing the law required them to report unidentified submerged objects of potential historical or hazardous value. The call was brief, Tom explaining that they had found an unknown structure on the seafloor with markings that could indicate it was dangerous. The Coast Guard acknowledged the report, saying they would send a small patrol boat with a dive team to assess the situation. By the time the patrol boat arrived, the afternoon sun had begun to dip, the sky painted in streaks of gold and crimson. The crew, 4 men in dark uniforms, moved with professional efficiency, but Tom saw the curiosity in their eyes as they transferred the data from the Abigail's sonar and reviewed the footage from Emily's dive. The team's leader, Officer Grant, a tall, broad-shouldered man with weathered skin and a firm handshake, approached Tom and Emily. "We'll need to investigate this closely," he said, his tone calm but firm. "If it's hazardous or contains remains, it will need to be marked off as a restricted site." Tom nodded, his eyes drifting to the water. "You'll see the symbols," he said quietly. "Be careful." The Coast Guard team prepared to dive, their heavier gear clanking softly as they moved. Tom and Emily watched from the Abigail as they slipped into the water, their dive lights flickering beneath the waves. The minutes passed in heavy silence, each tick of Tom's watch echoing in the cabin as he waited, feeling that strange certainty that whatever was down there, it was meant to remain hidden, that pulling it into the light might change things in ways they couldn't yet see. Then the Coast Guard divers resurfaced, but the look on their faces as they climbed back aboard their boat told Tom everything. They had seen it, the markings, the hatch, the structure that didn't belong on the ocean floor off the coast of Maine. Officer Grant removed his mask, glancing back at the water before looking at Tom. "This doesn't make sense," he said, his voice low. "It's sealed, and it's definitely not any known wreck. We need to call in federal support. This might be a classified structure, or..." His voice trailed off, but Tom saw the doubt in his eyes. Tom glanced at Emily, both of them realizing the magnitude of what they had found. The Coast Guard marked the site with buoys and requested aerial drones to monitor the area. They told Tom and Emily they would need to remain available for questioning, that the site was now under investigation, and that federal divers would be arriving soon to determine what lay beneath the water. As the patrol boat pulled away, Tom stared at the quiet water, feeling that the sea had given up something it was never meant to, that the hatch below was a door to a story larger than any he had ever imagined. "And now, I need to hear your thoughts. What do you think is hidden beneath that hatch on the ocean floor? Is it a forgotten Cold War relic, something ancient, or something that was never meant to be found at all? Let me know in the comments what you believe they discovered. Don't forget to hit like if you want to follow this story to its end. Subscribe for more real mystery discoveries like this, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what they uncover next in this chilling investigation. The next morning, Tom stood at the harbor, the fog rolling in thick as the low hum of engines grew louder, announcing the arrival of the federal team. 2 black SUVs and an unmarked van pulled up near the dock, the kind of quiet, clean vehicles that didn't match the salt-crusted fishing town's weathered aesthetic. Men and women in dark windbreakers with NOAA and DHS patches stepped out, moving with quiet efficiency, rolling cases of high-tech equipment toward the edge of the water where the Abigail rocked gently against the pilings. Officer Grant from the Coast Guard greeted them with a tight nod, handing over the sonar data and the footage from Emily's dive. Tom stood nearby, arms crossed, the medallion and scroll secured in a waterproof bag inside his jacket, weighing against his chest like a heartbeat he couldn't silence. Emily, dressed in her gear and checking her oxygen tanks, met Tom's eyes, the unspoken understanding between them. This was no longer just their discovery. It was now in the hands of forces they couldn't control. The lead federal diver, a composed woman named Agent Claire Whitaker, approached Tom. Her sharp gray eyes studied him, reading him before she spoke. "You're the fisherman who found the bottle," she stated, not as a question, but as a confirmation of a fact already known. Tom nodded. "And the one who followed it here." Claire glanced at Emily, acknowledging her with a nod, then returned her gaze to Tom. "We need your cooperation. This site may involve federal property, historical assets, or hazardous materials. We will take every precaution to ensure your safety and the integrity of the site." Tom held her gaze. "Just find out what's down there." Claire's expression softened slightly. "We intend to." Within an hour, the team had deployed a specialized ROV, a remotely operated underwater vehicle equipped with high-definition cameras, sonar mapping, and articulated arms capable of manipulating objects below. Tom and Emily stood over the portable monitors on the dock as the ROV descended, the feed flickering before revealing the familiar green murk of the deep. The lights cut through the darkness, revealing the structure buried in silt, the hatch clearly visible now as the currents shifted sand away. The camera zoomed in, and everyone fell silent. The symbols were clear, etched deeply into the corroded metal, matching exactly the medallion and the bottle's markings. Claire leaned forward, her brow furrowing as she whispered to one of her technicians, who began scanning the markings into a database for immediate analysis. The ROV's mechanical arm moved forward, brushing away more silt, revealing what looked like a locking mechanism beside the hatch, rusted but intact. The technician looked up, shaking his head. "No match in our system. These markings, they're not recognized in any historical, naval, or linguistic database we have." Claire's jaw tightened. "Continue." The ROV adjusted its angle, focusing on the hatch. Using a delicate grip, it turned the rusted locking wheel. It resisted, the silt and corrosion clinging stubbornly, until finally, with a low groan that even the underwater mic picked up, the wheel turned and the hatch cracked open, a burst of bubbles escaping into the water as the pressure equalized. On the monitors, a dark void yawned open as the ROV pushed the hatch fully aside. The lights cut into the darkness inside, revealing a metallic corridor descending at a slight angle, the walls lined with more etched symbols. The same design repeated every few feet as if marking a path deeper inside. The corridor was surprisingly intact, no signs of collapse, the structure seeming to resist the decades or centuries it had spent beneath the sea. Tom felt his breath catch, Emily's hand gripping his arm unconsciously. Claire's eyes remained locked on the screen. "Send it in," she commanded. The ROV advanced slowly into the corridor, the camera adjusting to the narrow space, each inch revealing more of the impossible. The walls were constructed from a dark, almost black metal, seamless in places, with no rivets or weld marks visible. Strange patterns were engraved near the floor, glowing faintly under the ROV's lights, a soft iridescence that shifted colors when the camera moved. The corridor opened into a small chamber, perfectly round, with a single pedestal in the center. On the pedestal lay an object about the size of a human skull, wrapped in a mesh of the same dark metal, wires or roots extending from its base into the pedestal, as if it were connected to the structure itself. The object glowed faintly, pulsing with a light that was not the reflection of the ROV's lamps. "What is that?" Emily whispered. The technician began scanning, the screen overlaying data and infrared readings. "It's emitting a low-frequency signal, but it's not electronic, almost like it's biological," he reported, his voice tight with confusion. Claire's eyes widened, her composure wavering for a split second before she recovered. "Retrieve it carefully," she ordered. The ROV's arm extended, grasping the object with padded claws, severing the thin tendrils that connected it to the pedestal. As it lifted, the glow pulsed once, a wave of light that made the camera flicker before stabilizing again. The team on the dock stood frozen, the only sound the lapping of water against the pilings, the distant cry of gulls muted by the weight of the moment. The ROV retreated, backing through the corridor and emerging into the open water, the object clutched securely in its grasp. As it surfaced, the federal team moved quickly, retrieving it with insulated tongs and placing it inside a sealed containment unit lined with lead and transparent shielding. The glow remained, soft but constant, even through the shielding, casting strange shadows across the faces of everyone watching. Tom felt the medallion in his pocket warming slightly, as if responding to the presence of the object, the same iridescence flickering across its surface. Claire turned to Tom and Emily, her voice steady, but her eyes betraying the storm beneath. "What you found is not just a wreck. It's something else." Tom swallowed, unable to tear his eyes away from the containment unit. "What is it?" Claire shook her head slowly. We don't know, but it's not military, not in any database. It's ancient, but the technology, the structure, it shouldn't exist. They placed the unit inside the van, locking it down with reinforced straps. As the federal team prepared to leave, Claire paused, turning back to Tom and Emily. This site is now classified. We will continue our investigation, but you need to understand. What you found may change things in ways we can't predict. Tom's gaze hardened, his fisherman's instinct fighting against the weight of authority. What about us? We're the ones who found it. Claire studied him for a moment, then nodded. We'll keep you informed, but I need you to be cautious. If you find anything else connected to this, anything, you contact me directly. She handed Tom a card with her direct line before she stepped into the van, the door closing with a thud that echoed across the dock. As the federal vehicles pulled away, leaving behind the scent of diesel and the weight of an unfinished story, Tom and Emily stood in the fading light, the water lapping quietly, as if nothing had happened, as if the sea was waiting to swallow its secret again. Emily exhaled slowly, breaking the silence. Tom, what if that was never meant to be found? What if it's waking up because we pulled it out? Tom didn't answer immediately. He reached into his jacket, pulling out the medallion, its surface shimmering faintly, the same rhythm as the glow of the object now taken away by the authorities. He looked at Emily, the unspoken question heavy in the air. Was it over, or had it just begun? And now, I want your thoughts. What do you think they truly discovered beneath the sea? Was it a lost relic of an ancient civilization, something not of this world, or a technology hidden for reasons we can't yet understand? Would you have opened the hatch, or would you have left it sealed forever beneath the waves? Let me know in the comments what you believe. And if you want to see what happens next in this chilling true fisherman's mystery, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the final chapter of this real-life discovery that may change everything. Tom barely slept that night, lying in bed with the medallion on the nightstand, its faint glow flickering in rhythm with the pulse in his neck. The federal team was gone, but the weight of what they had taken remained in the air of his small cottage, filling every shadow with the question, what had he truly pulled from the sea that morning, and why did it feel like it was calling him still? The next morning he returned to the docks, unable to leave the Abigail tied up and idle, feeling the water's pull in his bones. Emily was already there, staring out at the calm sea, a thin mist hanging above the waves like a veil. She turned as Tom approached, her eyes tired but resolute. I couldn't sleep, she admitted. Me neither, Tom said. They stood in silence, the gulls calling above, the scent of salt and diesel heavy in the morning air. Finally, Emily spoke, her voice low. I did some research last night. Those symbols, they've been seen before. Fragments found off the coast of Greenland, etched into stones pulled from the seabed. The patterns are the same. Some believe it's proto-writing from a civilization lost to the sea long before the last ice age. But nothing matches the technology we saw down there, Tom. Nothing. Tom felt a cold certainty settle in his gut. It wasn't a wreck. Emily shook her head. No, it wasn't. Tom pulled the medallion from his pocket, holding it out so the rising sun caught its iridescent flicker. The glow was brighter now, pulsing steadily, and as Emily reached out to touch it, a spark of light jumped from the metal to her finger, making them both flinch. Tom, it's reacting, she whispered. Before Tom could respond, his phone rang. The screen showed an unknown number. He answered, and Claire's calm but tense voice came through the static. Tom, we need to meet. Now. They met in a small cafe near the harbor, away from the docks and prying eyes. Claire was there with one technician, a pale young man with dark circles under his eyes, and a laptop case clutched to his chest. Claire's demeanor was different now, less the unshakable agent, more the human beneath the badge, carrying the weight of what they had found. What is it? Tom asked, his voice steady. Claire opened the laptop, turning the screen toward them. A series of images appeared, scans of the object they had recovered, the glow visible even under laboratory lights, pulsing in a steady rhythm. Data overlays scrolled across the screen, graphs of energy readings, symbols cross-referenced with linguistic databases. We ran every test we could, Claire said. Radiocarbon dating, spectral analysis, even magnetic resonance. This object, it's old, Tom. Older than any human civilization. Older than the last ice age. Older than the soil beneath our feet. Emily leaned in. How old? Claire's technician hesitated, then said quietly, "We stopped getting reliable data at around 100,000 years." Tom felt the world tilt, the cafe's sounds fading as he stared at the screen. "That's not possible." "We know," Claire said, her voice tight, "but it's true." Emily's eyes were wide. "What does it do?" Claire paused, glancing at the medallion glowing in Tom's hand. "We don't know, but it's responding to something. It started pulsing after we removed it, and the frequency of the pulse is increasing." "Is it dangerous?" Tom asked. "We don't know," Claire repeated, her jaw tightening. "But there's something else." She pulled up another file, a sonar scan of the seabed where the object had been retrieved. The hatch was now fully open, and the corridor inside was glowing with the same faint light as the object. But deeper inside the structure, another chamber was visible, larger, with shapes that the sonar couldn't fully resolve. "It's active now," Claire said. "Whatever you pulled out, it triggered something down there." Tom's mind spun. The bottle, the scroll, the coordinates, the object, the glow, the pulse. It was all connected. A chain of events that had begun the moment he had reached into the water and pulled that bottle aboard the Abigail. He felt the medallion in his hand, its glow stronger now, warm against his palm, and a deep instinct told him that it was not done with him. "What happens now?" Emily asked. Claire looked at them, her eyes dark. "We're sealing off the site. This is now under full federal and scientific lockdown." "But Tom," she hesitated, "you started this, and that medallion, it's linked to the object, to the structure." Tom's breath caught. "You're asking me to go back." "I'm not asking," Claire said, "but I'm telling you that you might be the only one it responds to." Tom looked at Emily, who nodded silently, ready. She had seen what lay beneath the sea, and she too could not walk away now. Together they returned to the Abigail, the federal team following in a separate vessel, the harbor crowd watching with quiet curiosity as the two boats moved out, cutting through the calm morning water toward the coordinates that had become the center of a mystery larger than any of them could have imagined. As they approached, the water felt different, thicker, vibrating softly beneath the hull. The sonar on the Abigail picked up the structure again, but the glow from the hatch was now visible even to the naked eye, a faint pulse beneath the waves, like the heartbeat of something ancient stirring after a long slumber. Tom slipped the medallion around his neck, feeling the warmth spread across his chest. Emily checked her gear, meeting Tom's eyes with a mixture of fear and determination. "Ready?" she asked. Tom nodded, gripping her hand for a moment before she slipped over the side, following the glow into the depths. Tom watched her dive, light merge with the underwater glow, the water closing over her, the medallion pulsing faster, in rhythm with something he could not see but could feel deep in his bones. Minutes passed, each one stretching longer than the last, the water around the Abigail humming softly. Then Emily's voice crackled through the radio, tight with awe and fear. "Tom, it's opening." "What's opening?" Tom demanded. "The second chamber. It's not empty." A flash of light erupted beneath the water, a column of bubbles breaking the surface near the boat. The glow intensified, rising from the depths like dawn breaking beneath the sea. Tom felt the medallion burn against his skin, the pulse matching his heartbeat, faster, faster, until it felt like it was a part of him. And then it stopped. The glow beneath the water dimmed, fading back into the green depths, leaving the surface calm once more. Emily's voice came through again, calmer but trembling. "Tom, you need to see this with your own eyes." He knew what he had to do. Tom slipped into his gear, the medallion warm against his chest, and dove into the cold water, following Emily's light down into the darkness. The pressure squeezed against him as he descended, but the glow guided him, pulling him toward the open hatch, the corridor, the second chamber. Inside, the chamber was vast, lined with more of the dark metal, the symbols etched everywhere, glowing softly. In the center, floating above a pedestal, was another object, larger than the first, its surface alive with iridescent light, shifting patterns that felt like they were looking back at him. Tom hovered there, the medallion pulsing gently, and in that moment, he felt a connection, a message without words, an understanding that the object was not a weapon, not a threat, but a memory of something that had been here long before them, waiting for someone to find it, to remember it, to awaken it. Tom reached out, his fingers brushing the surface of the glowing object, and in that instant, he saw flashes, oceans swallowing land, stars reflected in endless water, hands carving symbols into dark metal as storms raged above. He saw the structure sinking beneath the waves, sealing itself away, waiting for the right moment to be found. And then it was gone. Tom floated there, the glow fading, the object now dim and still. Emily grabbed his arm, pulling him back toward the corridor, toward the hatch, and together they surfaced, gasping for air as they broke into the sunlight, the water calm once more. They climbed back aboard the Abigail, the federal team pulling alongside, their eyes wide with questions they could not yet ask. Tom lay back on the deck, the medallion cool against his skin now, the weight of the ocean heavy but calm around them. Whatever they had found, whatever it had shown him, it was only the beginning. And now, I need to know what you think. Was this a message left for us? A warning or a gift from something that came long before us, waiting beneath the waves for the right moment to be seen again? Would you have followed those coordinates into the unknown? Or would you have let the ocean keep its secrets forever? Let me know what you believe in the comments. And if you want to discover more true stories of hidden mysteries pulled from the sea, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next time we uncover what the world was never meant to see. Because some stories, once found, can never be forgotten.